What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo-yo.
So, Nick, the co-main event, in my opinion, got even more exciting with the announcement of Kamaru Usman stepping in for Paulo Costa. And Dana White said, look, this is the number one contenders fight. The winner of Chimaev versus Usman will fight Sean Strickland. So there's a lot riding on this. I want to predict the fight. The odds makers do have Kamaru as the underdog, although they're giving him more of a chance than they did Costa. What do you make of it?
I find that to be a little bit interesting because, 9 days notice is no time to prepare for somebody in the UFC, especially somebody like Khamzat Chimaev. And who knows really where Usman's at mentally at this stage of his career. He's been one of the most dominant champions that the welterweight division's had for several years and really in the entire history of the sport. And once you climb to the top of the mountain, it's kind of hard to fall down and then climb it again or find a new mountain to climb. I guess the fact that this is at 185 might give him some sort of new extra juice and extra life into his career where he's like, well, I could go try to conquer another division. But still, to me, it seems like 9 days notice isn't enough time to prepare for Khamzat Chimaev. And that goes into the game plan. I really want to talk about the difference between Khamzat Chimaev's game plan for Paulo Costa versus Kamaru Usman, because I feel like the game plan for Paulo Costa was you're going to have to pressure this guy and you're probably going to have to go out there and go all 15 minutes with him because he's just so durable. He's so big. Now, Usman is a very durable guy as well, and he's not known for getting finished. Leon Edwards did get that last Hail Mary kick and beat him that one time, but Kamaru Usman's not a guy that's been finished very often in his career. And I don't see many ways for him to be finished other than a power shot, when they're exchanging on the feet, or some sort of slick submission out of Chimaev, which we've seen him do as well in his UFC career. And for those reasons, I think the game plan has to be changed drastically for Chimaev. And I know a lot of people say, don't change your entire game plan for one fighter, or don't switch your entire style of fighting for your opponent. Go work on your own skills, develop your own game plan and your style, and then go out there and perform to the best of your abilities. And if you brought the best skills, then you'll get your hand raised. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do to switch up their game plan for Costa as opposed to Usman, but I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. And I'm just going to go ahead and come out with my prediction. I'm going to predict that Khamzat Chimaev is able to get his hand raised. I think he's going to do it by finish, actually. Usman is a very tough fighter. I think he'll last a couple of rounds, but end of round 2, early round 3 is when I'm going to call Chimaev gets the finish on Usman. And I'm thinking it's either going to be a TKO ground and pound sort of stoppage, or as you said, one of those slick submissions if he's able to get to the back. Yeah. And this is no slight to Kamaru Usman. As you said, he's one of the most dominant welterweights we've ever seen. I think the most dominant welterweight since we saw George St. Pierre competing in the octagon, which I would put him at number 2, 170 all time on my list behind George. So Kamaru Usman is a first ballot Hall of Famer. By anybody's metric, he's one of the best fighters in welterweight history, and he was a great champion. But the Kamaru that I've seen post the Leon KO is not the Kamaru that we saw before the Leon KO. That second fight, he was a little flat-footed. He was a little timid. And one thing we know about Chimaev is he's coming out full bore from the time that bell rings. He's going to come across the cage. He's not going to take a step back, and he's going to start his attack. He's going to start his offensive and make Usman do something about it. So if Kamaru doesn't meet fire with fire, he could find himself on his back foot very quickly. That, coupled with the fact that he's in his late 30s now, he's had some knee issues and some injuries. He's already been at the top of the mountain, as you said so eloquently. How much motivation does he have? How much preparation does he have, given that he's accepted this fight on 9 days' notice? All of those things, to me, kind of point to the writing on the wall that Chimaev's going to get his hand raised, he's going to get a finish, and he's going to become the number one contender.
Yeah, I like that prediction. And when you talk about each aspect of the fight, where can this fight take place? On the feet, on the ground, up against the cage, or in some sort of clinch exchange that winds up going to the ground. I have to sort of give the edge, and I know I'm talking about a former champion here, but I have to sort of give the edge to Chimaev. I don't think that if they go out there and just strike with each other for 15 minutes, that Kamaru Usman is going to get the better of Chimaev. I also don't think that, given Kamaru Usman's grappling style, which forever was a grinding style, he's very great at putting somebody up against the cage. He's very great at getting people onto the ground, but he's not known for submitting people down there. And I just don't see him being able to hold Chimaev down and not throw up submission attempts and not find himself in some sort of, grappling exchanges that wind up making him more gassed and wind up being the reason that he has to stand back up on the feet just a little bit more gas left out of his tank. So I don't know where Usman has the best chance to win this fight. My money is saying that, if he's going to go finish Chimaev, it's got to be on the feet, and he's got to do it primarily with his hands. And I know that he wasn't a knockout artist early in his career, but later in his years as the champion especially, Trevor Whitman and the boxing skills that he's developed over the past few years have been really impressive. And while it's nothing flashy, it's nothing ultra creative, the fundamentals are getting him big KO finishes. I mean, nobody's finished Jorge Masvidal quite as nasty as Kamaru Usman did. And if he's able to land that same shot on Chimaev, who knows? He could, crumble Chimaev. He could sit him down. I just don't see that happening. Khamzat Chimaev's a very fast fighter. I think the fact that he's going to go in there and he's been, purposefully dieting and changing his regimen to be a 185 fighter and fit that frame out fully is going to give him an advantage on the strength. And I just think that he's got more ways to win. He's got electric, very explosive striking, and it's more creative and buttoned up than you would expect, because when you watch him grapple and you watch him get a hold of people, he's just so dominant. And generally, when you see somebody who's that dominant in the grappling realm, you assume that their striking is lesser. But for Khamzat, he hasn't proven that to us. He's shown us that his striking is just as lethal as his grappling. So as much as I'd like to see Usman, the former champion, go in there and insert himself as a top contender, or as Dana White's saying, a number one contender at 185, I don't see Kamaru Usman getting his hand raised in this one. I see Khamzat Chimaev coming guns a-blazing at him, bringing a serious pressure, catching him flat-footed, catching him, a little bit rusty because he hasn't been training, taking this on 9 days' notice. Of course, he's in the gym, but he's not doing the same sort of camp that Khamzat Chimaev was doing. And I just think he's going to be caught off guard by a storm that he's not going to be able to weather. So my final prediction is I actually think this is going to end pretty early for Kamaru Usman. I got first round TKO finish for Khamzat Chimaev. I think he's going to go in there, bum rush him, wind up catching Usman in one of these firefight exchanges, drop him, and then he's going to ground and pound finish.
Yeah, and one more thing that's pretty interesting. I saw a video on social media yesterday when Usman ran into Islam Makhachev in the hotel lobby, and they were kind of talking about preparation, weight cut, and things like that. And Usman said to Islam, even though I have the ability to weigh in up to 186 pounds, I'm probably going to come in closer to 182 because I've never really fought that heavy, and I don't want to be flat-footed. I don't want to have too much water in me. So I want to kind of be lean and be ready to perform at 182. And the only thing I'll say to that, I think that's smart. I don't think you should try to purposefully weigh more just to have a higher number on the scale.
Slow yourself down.
Exactly. But that being said, Khamzat Chimaev was preparing for Paulo Costa.
Right.
And if you look at the pictures of Khamzat Chimaev right now, we haven't seen him fight in almost 13 months. He is a different fighter right now. He is gigantic.
Right.
He looks very good in the training room, but he was training, most importantly, for a guy that by all intents and purposes is a 205er in Paulo Costa. He's a gigantic middleweight. So Khamzat was trying to put on some size and strength to take on one of the biggest middleweights, if not the biggest middleweight on the roster. So I think Chimaev, come fight night, he's going to weigh in well over 200 pounds. And I'm very curious to know, and we probably won't ever know, how much Kamaru Usman actually weighed in on fight night. But look for there to be a pretty big size differential between these two. I know they both compete at 170, but I think Chimaev is going to be far bigger. And I think the fact that he's 29 years old now, we haven't seen him in a year. All we've seen is this training. We know how good he was a year ago. When you do the math and then you have an aging Usman who's got some injuries,
9 days notice.
I just don't see this being a good night for Usman fans. I love Kamaru Usman, but I think that the time is now for Khamzat Chimaev. I think we see a new number one contender and the next title challenger at 185.
That's a great call. And Khamzat Chimaev is taking the same approach that John Jones did for moving up a weight class. And while Kamaru Usman will weigh somewhere between 180 and 185, a 9 days fight camp and 9 days notice doesn't give you enough time to build your frame. It doesn't give you enough time to game plan. And that's the one thing I will say might be in favor of Volkanovski and Kamaru Usman. while everybody on the main and co-main are both taking these fights on short notice, these guys haven't been in fight camps with one single opponent or one single goal on their mind for 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks. They've just been living their lives. So the pressure really isn't on them. If Kamaru Usman gets his hand raised, people will be surprised. If Volkanovski gets his hand raised, people will be surprised. All the pressure's on Islam Makhachev and Khamzat Chimaev to get their hands raised.
Very well said.